Welcome to Secrets from the Scene, a show for local musicians who want to improve their music, grow their audience, and learn about Minnesota's music scene. If you're interested in talking about all things music related and meeting interesting people from our local community, you're in the right place. Welcome to Secrets from the Scene. My name is Stephen Helvig, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we've got a great guest, David Feily. David is a multi-instrumentalist, a composer, an educator, and really a jack of all trades. He does a ton of stuff. He originally hails from Washington, D.C., moved to Minneapolis to attend school at St. Thomas, and is just an incredibly good guitarist. You might know him from several different projects around town. He plays with L.A. Buckner's Big Homie, BZ3 Organ Trio, and Minneapolis String Project, plus a ton of other side gigs and other hustles. David does guitar and music for a living, and because of that, is talented in a variety of different areas. And I think there's a lot to learn here about all the skills he needs to do what he does, how he manages his schedule, how he manages all the different relationships involved, tools he uses, how he thinks about his career, how he moves forward, how he gets endorsements. I can't wait. It's going to be exciting to learn from him. So please welcome David Feily.
Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate your time, man.
Absolutely.
So walk us through a little bit of your history. I know that there's a lot to cover, so you can kind of be as brief as you want, but at least from the time of studying music and kind of getting into the scene and what that looked like for you.
Gotcha. So I started on piano really young because my mom played piano and she wanted all of us kids to at least start doing that. So I feel like that's pretty typical. Eventually added the band instrument, which I feel like is also pretty typical for middle school, fourth grade, picked out the trumpet, you get to play all the instruments and you're like, man, I think this is going to be easier. It's 3 buttons and boy, was I wrong. But it turned out to be really fun. And then ended up picking up guitar more at the end of middle school and high school, and also started playing bass and drums and dabbling just like kind of with all the rock band instruments as well.
Sure.
But I stuck with the trumpet as well. And stuck with it enough to actually double major and do a double performance degree at St. Thomas in trumpet and guitar. One of them was performance and one of them was a liturgical music degree, but you still had to declare an instrument. So I probably could have gotten away with doing less, but I was doing a lot of Catholic church music at the time, and that was one of the draws to St. Thomas. They had offered me a job before I even fully was committed to going. So I had an awesome job being the instrumental coordinator for the chapel for all 4 years at St. Thomas. Kind of got out of that bubble a little bit, partially through like McNally Smith and that whole network of students and teachers and things like that, meeting them and getting out of that little collegiate bubble, I would say around like 2010, 11, 9, 10, 11, kind of when I was getting close to graduating. I was playing with more groups, not just with collegiate, stuff. Everything has pretty much grown from then. There was a couple of key pinnacle moments for meeting certain people. The Blue Nile was one of them, this restaurant over like Cedar Riverside by the Caboose, like in Seward. And they used to have this late night open mic. That also was like a musician's jam session, like this secret thing sort of, that was packed every single week because it was 18 plus. And it started at 11 p.m. And so people would show up at like 10 or whatever, and it would just be packed full of people from all walks of life that were trying to, sign up to play. But it was run by these amazing musicians. Kevin Washington and Desdemono was this amazing MC who kind of ran the more vocalist and poetry side. And Kevin was kind of managing that, but also the band. If you were like a badass musician, in the scene, you didn't have to sign up on the list. You would just like kind of get asked to go up, or you would switch out with other people. And it was kind of like a checking each other out kind of vibe too. It's like, what does this drummer sound like? What does this bass player sound like? And so there's always a house drummer, which was usually Kevin. And then house keys, it was Alicia Wiley, but she would just bring the keyboard and just like chill. Even though she was amazing, we would just beg her to play all the time because she was super dope. And then it was Johannes Tona. And just meeting them and that one first time was ridiculous. And then all the people that were there to hang out in that scene, I probably met 20 to 30 musicians that night that I still am friends with and play with on a regular basis.
Wow.
One of them being like Ryan Bynum. Like I remember he's also from the DC metro area and we had the same area code. We're like, oh man, where are you from? Like that whole thing. And like we've had a bond both musically and area wise since then.
Yeah.
So things like that were like catalysts and growing in the scene and just it's grown from there.
Yeah. So, when you went to school at St. Thomas and you're getting your double major, was your intention to be like, I want to be a live performer, I want to go out and play gigs? Was that always the goal?
I think so.
Okay.
Like there's always been other things like the church music, education, teaching that I think I could have gone into, but the performance thing was kind of always where my heart was at and still is.
Yeah.
And like the recording thing was always something I wanted to do that I thought would come with the live performance, like being in bands, like things like that, or producing your own music and writing your own music. I knew that recording was probably something I was going to do. And I had been messing around with recording like Sonar, Cakewalk and stuff like that since, high school. I would learn songs on drums, guitar, and bass and like keys to the best of my ability. And I would record like very primitively, like just recording in like levels basically in Cakewalk, like with one microphone. And I would put the recording or the MP3 in there. And then I would do all the instruments one by one. And then I'd take out the song. And so it'd just be me and doing these covers.
Yep.
And so I have a bunch of old recordings probably at my parents' house of me doing that and like shedding, learning tunes. And it was super fun.
How much recording do you do now?
I do a fair amount. It kind of ebbs and flows depending on my own projects, depending on my collaborative efforts with other artists. Right now, I'm in kind of mixed mode with a couple different projects right now.
That's kind of another area I've been meaning to ask you is how have you, over the years, as you've played in all these different groups, because that's kind of my, I've known your name for a long time, right? And you've played with a lot of people that I've worked with. How do you manage how many projects you're doing for others and how many you're doing for yourself?
That's a really good question. It's something that I'm always questioning myself about the balance, all the time. I would say in a nutshell, I try to pick groups that I will be a team player in, like, and have more of an equal collaborative spirit with. And those are the things that interest me more, things that have a door open for me to have my say in something musically or arrangement wise or whatever. And so I will lean more towards those kind of opportunities than just kind of the artist for hire or work for hire or, hired gun type of mentality. So if I have the chance, even if it's not my own project or my own name on it, if I have the chance to be more of myself, I will gravitate towards those things. And especially if they can also be financially viable in that whole sense of things, piecing everything together, I will try to make those things happen over the other opportunities.
You want to have a creative say as much as possible is kind of what you're getting at.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I want to have more of myself out there, even if it's in a collaborative spirit. So it's balancing what I can do on my own and collaborators I pull in for my completely own music. And then what can I work on with other people, either helping them arrange their music, helping them to make their music better, co-writing with people, adding my tunes to people's records, things like that, or bringing in my tunes for bands, which I've done in the past, kind of combining forces. And in some genres, that's more common, I would say, like in jazz or fusion, down from like the jazz greats, switching around their band members, asking them to write tunes for their albums, having it be more collective, all the way up to like Snarky Puppy, different band members write tunes. They have different eras of different drummers or different guitarists or whatever.
Yeah.
It becomes more like a collective, but people have this artistic say. And so I really enjoy being in groups like that where I have, more of me in there.
Yeah. That reminds me, Snarky Puppy and just that whole scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I first either saw you play or whatever, I'm still convinced we met at some point, but I have no idea when or where. But yeah, because I know you were playing with a group that I did a record with a long, long time ago, Michael Right and the Wrongs. And that's part of the jam band scene here in town. Mm-hmm. And you were kind of in that circle. And now you're more into the jazz fusion scene, I guess. Walk me through a little bit of that. Like, why did you transition? Was the reasons behind it? Was it intentional? And what's the difference between the scenes?
That's a great question. So the jam band scene was probably one of the first true scenes in town that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
I was asked to play trumpet in a horn section for the band Absolute Groove. This was, again, around mid-college, so 2009, 10, 11, something like that. But me and my good friend Matt Potter from St. Thomas, who is a saxophone player, and he was going through the music ed track, and we were playing the wind ensemble and jazz band and stuff together. but they were looking for horns. They were going to do this big concert at the Loring Theater, and they were filming it live, all this stuff. So they were like, we want to add horns, make it this whole thing. And we're like, sure, we're going to do it. It was awesome. Then they're like, hey, we want to add you to the band. And that got even cooler and stuff. You know, we did some really, really fun gigs. We were playing festivals, and it was going really great. And then there were just some differences in that particular band where I decided to leave, but I was still already ingrained in the jam band scene.
Yeah.
I had met guys like Kevin Gastonway, who tours with Corey Wong now. I had met him playing with Kevin Washington, who I'd mentioned before, but he was also heavily really into the jam band scene, playing with Michael, playing with Soul Spectre, playing with PB and the Jam, which became New Sound Underground.
Yep.
And that was another way for me to kind of get into the scene deeper. I was a super fan of theirs. I would come out and see their shows. And eventually when their original guitar player, Trent, moved back to Portland, Oregon, they asked me to join the band. And so that was another way back into the jam band, but it was also in the jazz fusion thing. And to rewind a little bit back to your question, the transition into the jazz fusion thing kind of was, I sort of never left the jam scene because all that stuff is included in that genre, like Lettuce and like Motet are like these kind of like more funky only versions of, you know, snarky, you know, instrumental bands that people are like very into in the jam band scene even still. And so I feel like I never left it. Like I'm playing with Michael Wright in like Shoeless Revolution right now.
Yeah.
You know, I'm currently in jam bands with my friends that I enjoy very much. And I'm still in the scene. You know, we play at Shangri-La and we played all these festivals and it's a lot of fun. But one of the reasons why there was a transition kind of out of it at one point was because there was just so many more gigs that I was getting that were with people that I respected a lot in the music scene that were not in the jam scene. So the jam scene is, I think, one of the strongest scenes in town, actually, for music just in general. Like for people that go out to shows, the people that go to shows together, like the Caboose, like the Wednesday nights at the Caboose. You know, it used to be at the Downtime before that. It was Trocaderos and stuff. All that was before my time of getting in the jam band scene. But the Caboose Wednesdays was like a festival every week. Everybody would talk about what shows they were going to on the weekends. And when that whole scene fractured, whatever, the passing of the torch, in my opinion, was not done correctly. And things kind of fizzled out scene-wise. But I would still say that that scene is really strong in the Twin Cities as a whole.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of went on a lot of divergent tangents there. But I would say I never fully transitioned out. My focus just kind of shifted to more than just the jam band scene. I would say that was where I was getting a lot of my gigging experience outside of the collegiate stuff, outside of just the straight jazz thing. And then it took a while to find other people that had the same, you know, sub interests in the genre of jazz as well, where I could align my focus.
Talk to me about the jazz/fusion scene then here in town, because I don't know a lot about it really.
I would say musician-wise, it's pretty strong. There's a lot of really great players. You have a lot of venues like the Ice House in Berlin and Dakota that really do a good job of supporting. And that spills into even some of the First Ave venues. Like we used to do Turf Club shows. We used to do, you know, Fine Line, Triple Rock, like all these awesome venues. And we did them as like instrumental fusion bands. I feel like for a while, there was this really awesome spark of bands that were kind of doing it together, like New Sound Underground, Foe, Hustle Rose, MPLS. There's like these snarky-ish hybrid instrumentals, sometimes, you know, jazz, neo-soul, fusion, pop stuff that was all coming together. Do you remember the series Funk on First at all? It was at the First Ave main room, and I think we did 2 or 3 of them. And it was just like these powerhouse lineups, like 4 or 5 bands each time, and it was packed. And it was like this new kind of energy, and I feel like it kind of fizzled out a little bit, at least since then. I can't remember, mid 2010s, like 14, 15, 16, something like that.
Sure.
Unfortunately. But the jazz scene is really strong. I would say the fusion scene here isn't as strong as places like LA or New York. Just people's interests don't lie there. It's like a very musician-y kind of genre for the most part. But I really love going to other places where you know that people appreciate it.
Yeah.
And like people appreciate the more like fusion-y rock prog, you know, crossover.
Cool. Talk to people about the 3 big projects that you're kind of involved in now. I know you're doing a lot, but these were kind of 3 that you brought up that were a little bit of the priorities right now.
Yep. I would say LA Buckner's Big Homie Band is definitely one of them. It's become very collaborative between bandmates and our writing and our arranging. We're all bringing tunes to the table. We're all helping arrange and kind of policing each other and helping each other produce each other and produce ourselves. We're kind of leveling up in our management game. We've got new management and stuff, and that's been very helpful on the admin side and the connection side. just to see what we're fully capable of with some help.
Yeah.
I think there's an overall lack of industry or a lack of observable music industry in the Twin Cities. And so this has been extremely educational for me and also helpful for the band. Even having all this experience, but doing a lot of it yourself and wearing all these different hats, having somebody that's an experienced manager has been very helpful. Shout out to Jeff.
Who's your manager?
Jeff Taube.
Taube?
Yep. He does Mid-America Talent.
Okay.
And he's kind of like he's out there, but he's kind of undercover about some of his connections that he has. And so it's been very, very helpful to be able to have open dialogue about business things and connections and next steps and all that stuff.
Was that somebody that the band pursued, or did he reach out to the band?
I think it was mutual between him and LA. It was probably a long time coming, but we started to get our assets in order and started to prove to him that we could, get stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
And we're being very proactive on stuff ourselves. We have a new album that we're coming out with. We're making some mixing decisions right now, and we're just looking to move forward. He's going to help us shop the album around to labels and things like that. There's just so many more things on our radar now that would not have been if it weren't for him.
That's great. What about the other two projects?
So the other two are the BZ3 Organ Trio, and that's kind of funky jazz, soulful, bluesy. It encompasses a lot because we can play so many styles of music. We just play whatever we think is fun. But that's Brian Z on the organ, and he's doing left hand and pedal bass, and Kevin Washington on the drums, who's been a longtime mentor and friend and one of the most amazing musicians and drummers that I've ever heard in my entire life.
Very cool.
Hands down. So that's been a fun group. We have a residency at the Schooner Tavern in South Minneapolis just to kind of keep the chops up to speed. And we've kind of been growing our following there, just letting people know what we're doing and what we're about. Jazz 88 and Sean McPherson and all the crew over there have been really kind to us about pumping our shows. Same for LA Buckner, actually, too. We'll go on and do interviews, and they'll pump our shows and show us love a lot, which is really helpful and awesome. And they play our music, too. Like Jazz 88, shout out to you guys, too. Like, they are an awesome community resource.
Yeah.
And then the third group is the Minneapolis String Project. And that is me with Ernest Bisong on the violin and now viola, and Greg Byers on the cello and bass. I really was a catalyst to start that group to try to get those guys to play in more of their true forms. They're string players, they're bowed string players, so they get like pigeonholed into classical or, very specific styles. And both of them are such great improvisers in jazz and in fusion and in rock, and they can do the whole classical thing. They can read really well. They're great educators. But I was like, I need to pluck you guys out into a situation where people can really realize how amazing you are. Like, yeah. I'm there supporting those guys. Like, I'll take a back seat and support them anytime on a gig, and which happens, a lot. It's just me trying to get them to sound the best and trying to create the balance between us three.
Yeah.
And we play a ton of original tunes. We like to write for that particular ensemble because we know what each other like musically. We know what we're capable of, and we kind of have a general sound for that trio in mind. Mm-hmm. And so we play a ton of private gigs, both where we can play our original music and then also kind of just like background stuff, corporate wedding kind of stuff. And then we also book our own original shows, and we'll play clubs and things like that. It's super fun.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Okay, so that's a preview of some of the big groups that you're most actively involved in, I guess would be a good way to put it. I know you also do education. What does that side of your career look like?
So that has always ebbed and flowed for me as well. Coming out of college, I was teaching 4 days a week out in Plymouth on like 4 different instruments. And doing composition classes, master classes, songwriting. I was doing trumpet lessons, guitar, bass, and piano, running rock band stuff. And that burnt me out. I would go home and not want to touch an instrument. Like, I love teaching. I love that. But I've found for me, what's energizing to me about teaching is to find people that are already interested and self-motivated on their own first. And so when they come to me, I can tell they have certain things that they're already interested in that interest me, or I can tell that they're curious enough. And that's what I want to kind of unlock. I want to unlock their potential through the things that they're going to become curious about and what I can point them in the right direction. Through that, I've basically cut down my private lessons a lot, and I'm very selective about who I take. I've taught at Cadenza Music in St. Paul. It's in my neighborhood. I currently don't have any students through them because I've declined to take some on because I am, like I said, I don't have a ton of time, but B, I want to be selective and make sure that it's mutually beneficial. Even though I'm the teacher and they're supposed to be getting something out of it, I want to make sure that it's good for me too.
Yeah.
And that it's a good fit. I do still have some private students that I do teach, but for the most part, they're not weekly lessons. They're like a check-in. It's like when you're ready to come back, when you've digested the information, it might be every other week, it might be every month, or it might be once every couple months. But it's people that know how to play usually, that are possibly gigging musicians that just want to increase their skills or know more about what they're doing so that they can communicate better, so they can learn on their own easier. Like, I want to give you the keys to learn. Like, I want you to graduate from me, and like, because all the information is out there. And I think if you're pointed in the right direction and you get them curious, I think that's the biggest key. Mm-hmm. Meeting them exactly where they're at, doing the work to embrace them in an empathetic way, take what they're already interested in, show them the musicality, and show them that what they're doing and interested has validity and it's meaningful to them. Teach them music through that, and then open the door to other things that you think that they will enjoy or that will increase their musical and their worth and the worthiness of how they feel about music or whatever, and their talents.
I love that. I think that's such a great way to approach music lessons, particularly for new students. I mean, you're not necessarily working with new students, but I think that approach works really well when teachers are open to first starting with where they're at and what they're interested in, and then pushing other things once there's motivation for it. Because the story of I started piano lessons and then quit after a year or two is, I think, largely tied to the fact that you're just doing stuff you don't care about. If there was more of that, of like, well, what do you actually want to do? What do you want to get out of this? Let's start there first. And then we'll circle back to the rudimentary stuff. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
It takes more work, probably, because you can't just blanket teach everybody the same.
Correct.
And it takes more mindfulness, and it takes more preparation, individual preparation from a teacher to be able to split yourself to go to where all these students need to be met. But I think it's more meaningful, and you get their attention. You show them respect by doing that too. You build a stronger relationship right off the get-go. If you are like, oh, show me what you like, and don't poo-poo it. It's like, oh, you don't need to learn that. Like, there's so many situations where I've seen other teachers just like completely crush what somebody wants to do. And I probably have done it in some ways too, but completely crush somebody because they don't take into account what they want to do at all.
Yeah.
And that's a question and conversation that you have to ask too. That's one of the first questions. So I know how to approach it. It's like, do you want to read music at all? Do you care about that? Like, are you playing in a band? Or do you want to strum songs around the campfire with your friends? Do you want to, there's so many different goals for music. And if you've never talked about it with your student and you're just like, here's stuff, here's things, here's stuff, that's way less meaningful.
Yeah. So private lessons is a part of it. Are you also teaching at MacPhail?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was getting there.
Yeah.
So MacPhail is where I'm at the most, but it's not private lessons so much. It's more about developing programming, developing access, developing interest in and expanding the styles of music that can be taught and offered at MacPhail. So a lot of it is ensemble stuff. A lot of it is performance. A lot of it's outreach and just getting people more interested in what MacPhail has to offer. Institutions like MacPhail have a huge role in the scene, especially with the closure of places like McNally Smith and IPR, and just the whole general going to college for music or art in general. The way forward for education is to move everything down to the high school level, not just for music. This is kind of my soapbox moment, maybe.
Sure,
but what is happening for everything else, from sports to nursing and medicine to cooking and culinary stuff to engineering, especially, and coding, all that stuff that is coming down from the collegiate and the upper education ranks, that is coming down to the high school levels to get people prepared for the jobs of tomorrow and the future, to get them already interested in what they might want to do for college. That is not happening in music enough. And if you can get that into public schools better, you can give kids an opportunity at an earlier age and with way less money invested. You can let them find out if they have some kind of possible career in music, especially the interest and curiosity part. It's like, maybe the piano isn't it for them. Maybe the violin isn't for them. Maybe, and if you don't have a space for them to try that out and you're taking away more funding for that stuff, it's just going to keep going down the drain, unfortunately. Yeah. So MacPhail has a chance and almost a calling, I think, to step up to especially high school and middle school level students and to show them what standard music program at a college would be like. And then also these real world experiences about just being in a band at a high level, where you're supported through technology for all these different ways to make music, where you're supported through, the recording arts, where you're supported through, a modern sort of place to rehearse, like even just like the room and the space you're in. All that stuff is super important because they're not getting it other places. Like, I am still appalled that the state of Minnesota does not have jazz band in high schools. as a class, that it is an extracurricular. That is just unfortunate to me.
Yeah.
And it might take a state legislature, lobbying or a bill or something like that. But that would be something that I think would be amazing for the scene at large. It would have a rippling effect through kids, through parents, through current educators, for future educators. It would be really good for the scene. It would be good for venues. You would have people that would be looking for a higher level of teaching. You'd find kids that would search for more people like me. You'd have more parents taking their kids to venues. Yeah, you'd have kids starting bands more. You'd have them listening to music that, the snarky puppy type of stuff that it's like being on a elite varsity team, but for music,
Mm-hmm.
And concert band, you don't get that experience. And that's one of the reasons why I stuck with trumpet for so long, is because I wanted to have these other completely different experiences from guitar. Like playing in a jazz big band versus playing in a guitar ensemble is completely different.
Yeah.
Or even playing guitar in a typical big band is way less fun for me than playing trumpet.
Sure.
But I think it would have a huge impact. And I definitely, in the Maryland, DC, Virginia, DMV sprawl, when jazz band is part of your day, like it was for us, when you show up to all county or all state jazz band, you notice it. You put our all county, Montgomery County MoCo, all county jazz band up against the all state, Minnesota jazz band, and we would shred. We would shred them. I remember it was just insane level of playing at the high school level. Just insane because of the interest and the curiosity.
Yeah.
You would have world-class players, especially saxes in the rhythm section. I feel like you get these guys that just go in super hard. I remember it was semi-traumatizing. The trumpets, are in the back row of the big band. You're standing up. The saxes are all in the front. And every time any of the trumpets would take a solo in rehearsal, all the saxophone players would turn around in their chairs to see who is, sucking it up, compared to them. But it was like cunning. It was like these world-class players that you got to play with in high school. And it was like that. Like there needs to be more experiences like that. MacPhail is one of them. All-State Jazz could possibly be one of them at some point.
Sure.
But if you're trying to draw these elite students from places where it's not really an elite place, it's just not going to be as good, and you're not going to have as good representation.
Yeah.
So that's my little soapbox thing. I think there would be a huge rippling effect, if jazz bands were part of public school.
Yeah. I think that's great. No argument from me at all. I think that we continue to see a decline in the support for that sort of thing. But the good thing about it is that music is very possible to do on your own, as many of us have, whether that's starting your own band or as long as your school has a jazz band, you can still be as active in it and as serious about it as you're willing to be, as you want to be. Obviously, you're still at the mercy of having a good teacher, but that's the case with everything. There's no way around that. True. You can't guarantee good teachers for anything. So at least there's the ability to, if you feel like you're not in a place that has a good program for something, there's always the ability to do things on your own and travel a little bit. And there's a lot to be gained from the independent way of doing it too. And I'm not in any way disagreeing that it should just be more funded and more available and all of that. But if you find your way, don't get discouraged. Like, do stuff on your own. There's a lot to learn there. And that's also a pretty good way to learn what the real music business is going to be like, because it's very entrepreneurial. So in any case, let's move on from the educational conversation, because I want to touch on a couple of other things that you're doing all the time. So you've got your, let's say, I'll call them bands that you're in, right? Mm-hmm. Even though band may not be the best term for all of them, but these projects that are your big projects, you're supporting member. You've got the educational side of things, mm-hmm. private lessons through MacPhail. Then you've also got the one-off hired gun kind of projects, and that's a large variety of things. But it's a big part of your work and a big part of your schedule still. Walk people through what that is. Just some examples of the different people you're collaborating, what you're expected of in that, and then additionally, how you manage each one of those things.
Gotcha. So yeah, the whole hired gun thing, I've tried to replace some of the other kinds of jobbing stuff that I find less interesting, in particular, like the wedding and corporate stuff. I've been trying to replace that with playing more like featured sets. Like I'd rather, instead of playing like 3 or 4 sets, I'd rather play one like 90-minute or like two hour-long sets. Like a lot of the hired gun stuff I do is either at the Dakota, Chanhassen Dinner Theater, the Fireside Theater. Crooners is another big one. Those are 3 of the bigger venues, I would say, where I'm doing like hired gun stuff for like tribute shows and things like ticketed, like kind of sit down kind of things, less like club show hired gun things. So that's kind of more like the theater-y supper club vibe. And for that stuff, sometimes the show just repeats itself, like let's say a tribute, and sometimes the set doesn't change that much. And I will be like first call or something for that. Or I'll be like second call, or there might be 3 guitar players or 4 guitar players split between the electric and the guitar book, or electric and acoustic guitar books. And I will learn the music, right? Sometimes there'll be charts, but usually there isn't for a lot of these gigs. And sometimes the charts are wrong or whatever. So I'm oftentimes making my own chart or my own form of some chart, and learning and remembering the tune based off of that. If there's live recordings, I'll listen to those. Organizationally, I will make a playlist, and I like to have stuff in order. So I'll make the playlist in the set order that I'm doing. If all the stuff is on Spotify, I'll use that as my main kind of streaming thing. Sometimes it'll be YouTube, just because some stuff isn't on Spotify, or that's what's been provided. Sometimes I'll have to transfer it one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it'll be Dropbox links, especially if there's like live performances and stuff like that. And since I like stuff in order again, I'll go through and number them all.
Sure.
So I'll put them in the set list order in a folder, blah, blah, blah. And I'll run it like that just because I like to get the flow. And that just helps me overall. I'll transfer my paper charts if I've written them down on paper. Usually that's the fastest way. And if there's not crazy stuff I have to remember, I won't use Finale or Sibelius or whatever. And so usually things are 1-page paper chart, and I take pictures of them and I turn them into PDFs for my iPad. And it depends on if it's a reading gig or not, but usually I'll digitize them anyway, just to help me remember. And then it allows me to change the order of them really easily.
Okay.
It also allows me to share them with other people if they need to get on the same page and some notes, or if they need something. And then I play the gig, And so a lot of those shows, they don't care if you read on them.
Yep.
And so I'm not committing a super huge mental capacity to memorization. But I would say just my natural music tendencies allow me to usually memorize most of the tune anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm writing these charts out where it's not giving me every note that I'm playing. I still have to know how the song goes.
Yeah.
Just because I want to not spend A, too much time writing the chart, and B, don't want a mess to look at, and I still want to know the tune.
Yes.
So for all those gigs, I would, depending on the difficulty of them, I can probably play, most of the gig with no charts, but I just have them just in case. They help particularly for form stuff.
Mm.
And I'm writing stuff straight down with my charts, so I never have to like flip back. Usually I can just read it straight down.
Okay, yeah.
And so it's just like my own form of chart writing is really streamlined and really helps.
Yeah.
And I just have stacks and stacks of folders at home with different charts for different people that I've written.
Yeah.
And then I just have the iPad,
Yeah. There's a couple things I want to dive into there. First, you mentioned, when we brought up the hired gun type of shows, you mentioned tribute shows, things that get played at the Dakota, at the Chanhassen Dinner Theater, at Crooners. Give an example of a couple tribute shows that you've done.
Okay. Also, there's a spectrum of tribute shows.
That's why I want you to talk about that a little bit.
So there's ones that are like, oh, this is a tribute to Bonnie Raitt. That's one of the ones we do at Chan and Crooners. Deb Brown runs that show. That one, it's like, okay, everything is by Bonnie Raitt.
Yep.
There's like the classic prog tribute that I do with Charles Fletcher and Brian Z and Dave Anania and Bill Pyle. And that is, yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Genesis, Marillion, and Rush.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit more expansive than just one artist.
It's a genre tribute versus an artist tribute.
Exactly. And so that's what I was meaning by spectrum. Mm-hmm. There's other ones that are like dedications to like an era or like a documentary or like a movie or something like that.
Yep. And these are like ticketed shows. You sit down, supper clubs, they're dinner theaters, that kind of thing.
Yep, the Dave Matthews Band tribute show that I do with Max Krauth is super fun. That band is smacking really hard.
Yep.
We sound really, really good, and we sell out a lot of shows doing that one, especially at Chanhassen. We've kind of like got a little following out there now.
That's cool.
And so that's been a super fun one. And we also do the Tim and Dave Matthews, Tim Reynolds acoustic duo show for all the super nerd fans, the Super Dave fans. They love that whole, like the Live at Luther duo show. And like there's like all these famous duo things.
Okay.
So we'll do that one too. What are some of the other ones?
That's probably enough for people to understand what tribute shows are like. Yeah. But there's other types of hired gun gigs. There's also just sitting in with a solo artist or that sort of. Talk a little bit about what those look like.
So those are a little bit different. I feel like they take a different level of care and respect. It's not like some historical, legendary artist you're trying to recreate or do justice. You are trying to develop and produce yourself to sound and support the artist the best that you can. You're trying to make them feel the most comfortable and confident in themselves and in what you're doing. So I'll do the same thing. I'll learn their music. And then what'll differ is depending on if I use charts or not. Some of them I feel a little bit guilty about it, using them that I probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
And I could probably get through the gigs. But again, I just hate musically missing stuff.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I will use charts when I probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
Especially recently. Just because one of the things that kind of allows me to do is to take a high volume of gigs. This is something I also feel guilty about, to not fully give everything all of your brain power. Like one of the things I say a lot of the times when people ask me like, you know, how I'm doing and how busy I am, I'd love the frequency of that I'm playing and that I'm working, but I wish it was with less people.
Yeah.
And so I could spend less time compartmentalizing the music in my brain.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I feel definitely guilty about.
Yeah.
In certain
I want to circle back to that too. I feel like there's another point to be made there.
Yeah. But yeah, playing for artists is definitely different. And it's, you have to learn their music and then also ask them sometimes different questions about how they want it played. And sometimes you have to ask for stems.
How much of that are you doing where you're just playing with solo artists, for instance?
A lot,
right?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yep. Some of them, I played bass with Ken Valdez last night, opening for a national artist on tour at 7th Street. I'm playing bass for Michael Wright coming up. I'm playing guitar and Shoeless. Those are a little bit different because they're like jam collective things.
Yep.
Who else am I playing for?
Jackie Blue,
T. Michael Rambo.
I've seen you do stuff
Steve
with Ezra.
Cole, Ezra Tuolo.
Yep.
Who else? I mean, there's just a lot. Murphy Smith. Yeah, and it kind of ebbs and flows, over the years too. Some of them are jazz artists, but then again, it's a little bit different because it's like more jazz collective. Like, they might not hire me every time, but that's very much within the jazz, thing.
Yeah, definitely. I have a number of questions and I'm just trying not to forget them all. But first, I want to keep going back to, as you were describing the process of doing these hired gun gigs, you spent a lot of time talking about how you do charts, how you think about charts, how you organize charts. And I want to point out that is because it's the only way to handle that. Doing charts is a big part of your job. And
absolutely,
being good at them, being fast at them, having good systems for them is a big part of being a professional guitar player like you. You have to be good at charts. So there's some young kids, I'm sure, that are going to listen to this and go like, charts, not interested,
Yep.
It is an unavoidable thing if you want to be able to take on this many gigs and play in this many styles.
I would say so. Or you're going to be working way more hard to try to cram a lot more into your brain and try to retain, which is possible. There's definitely people that can do it. But some of these gigs don't need that level of focus. Maybe, yes, it would be better if you memorized it, but if you can nail everything with, looking at charts and everybody else is using charts, there's this kind of like line about it.
Well, so that's the next thing I kind of want to get into, which you were saying, I feel guilty, right?
Yeah.
Because for tribute shows, there's the culture, the expectation of like, it's okay if we're reading this.
Well, it depends on the tribute show.
Exactly.
I would say the super high level ones like Hairball.
Yeah. Of course.
It's like, oh, that's their thing,
Yeah. So, let's just say there are, whether it's tribute or not, there are places and situations where it's okay to have an iPad out. It's okay to have charts out. And then there's other places where it's like, no, you're kind of expected to memorize it. You don't, particularly for original bands. If you go to see a show and they're reading the lyrics, it's weird. A vibe killer for super fans, right?
Right.
Which we all, I think, mostly understand. What I wanted to point out, though, is that it's okay to do what you have to do. You feel guilty about it, but at the same time, and this kind of ties a little bit to what we were talking about earlier when I was lamenting to you about like just keeping up with content, podcast episodes, and running a studio full time, and all the different projects and conversations that are happening all the time, every day. Things get dropped, things get behind that you don't want to. It's kind of the same thing. You're trying to do so much stuff, and there are times where it's like, oh, this is going to have to be charted because otherwise I'm not going to do my best or whatever it is. Yep. And to some extent, I think it's okay. We need to be okay with that. Not as an excuse. That's not what I'm saying. It's as you're trying to build something and as you're trying to get to that higher level where it could be, the one job that can replace the other 6 that are holding it up financially.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's okay to do what you have to do. And you're trying to get things out. The main thing I want to, I guess, say here is that something is better than nothing. Like getting the gig and doing it as well as you can is better than not doing it at all in some cases. Now, there's a gray area there where if you're not going to do a good enough job, maybe say no. But in your case, I know that as a fact that like your half effort even is still going to be very, very good. So there's an element of like, it's all right. As people are trying to build up their audience, build up the systems in place to put out content, whatever it is, whether it's shows or just general social media stuff. It's like, because this conversation, this attitude, this philosophy crosses over into a lot of things that I see musicians get hung up on, especially around social media, which is it's got to be good. It's got to be at least this good, or I'm not putting it out. And that's just, I get it. There is some truth to this, but a lot less than what people are putting on. It's okay if it's only this good. It's better to have it out and to be growing and to be doing something and to be working at getting this good all the time. You know, you got to think of it as an average. Like over time, the average will keep getting higher.
Absolutely.
Some stuff is a little below your bar. Some stuff's at your expectations or above, right? You just got to keep moving. You can't worry about all those little things or you become self-defeating.
Yep. Or stuck or you will regress. Yep.
Yeah. I just, maybe that was my soapbox moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I say that as much for myself. It's one of the things that I've learned over the last few years of doing more content, doing more projects. It's like, I wouldn't have made the progress that I have if I wasn't willing to do it, you know, sometimes less than ideal. Again, not to make excuses or not to say like, oh, that wasn't as good as what I could have done. It's like, you just have to keep moving, you know? A lot of times our own expectations are way higher than the people around us.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely struggle with that. My expectation for myself is very high.
So if you know that's about yourself, it's okay. You know, don't beat yourself up too much and keep moving. Put a little bit more focus in the fact that you were able to pull it off than, oh, I didn't do it exactly the way I wanted to.
Right.
You know, because I would argue that pulling it off is more important.
Like I said before, I'm like about nailing everything, you know, well as I can. So that's one of the ways that helps me do that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like putting in the work in a different way, if that makes sense. Like, yes, I can sit on the couch and like put the AirPods in and like do this and like memorize it. Either way, even when I do end up memorizing something, I'll still write a chart at the beginning because it just helps me. It makes me know that I know the song and I know what's going on. I can visualize it. Like sometimes I'll actually, when I memorize something, I'll visualize something that I've written in the chart to help me remember something.
Yeah, that's your learning technique. And
Yep.
Okay, I have one more question that's related to the one-off hired gun kind of gigs. Because I think, you know, most people understand the concept of how it works if you're a part member of a band. You know, you might have your role in the band, but everybody's working towards this common goal. Whereas when you're a hired gun, particularly, let's say, for a solo artist, it's a little less clear what your role is. And that can change depending on what they're asking you to do. And obviously, you've done that hundreds and hundreds of times. How do you manage those kind of collaborations when deciphering and understanding, I just need to play this part that I'm being hired for, or I need to be a collaborator here and they kind of want me to be in the band as much as I'm willing to be, but I'm not really in the band. And am I going to be compensated for all this work? There's all of that gray area.
Oh my gosh.
How do you handle that?
The first part is to try to read the room before any verbal communication. Take all the information that has been verbally or through text or through emails, take all that information that's been given to you, digest it, try to extrapolate as much as you can. I want all pieces of information at all times, and I probably to an annoying level to some people, just because it helps me figure out, you know, what I need to do, where I need to be, how much work and time do I need to put into something, whether or not I wanted to do it in the first place. The second level is to, you know, explicitly ask. You know, like, what do you need me to do if anything is unclear? The third level is a kind of like some part of the gray area you're talking about as well, is how much do you step out of the confined role that you've been assigned, or that you, especially in those collaboration senses, like when something isn't going right, but you aren't getting paid or hired to be MD in that person's band, what do you do? And like, is it going to be a detriment to me? Like, is it going to make us all look bad? And do I need to say something? Does the artist not realize what's going on? Do they care? All these different levels. So there's that stuff too. And I've definitely probably overstepped my bounds sometimes in certain situations, either trying to remedy something that should be remedied and might not need to. Like, there's just been so many different situations. Or just want my collaborative spirit wanting to take over when it doesn't need to. But also it's been very helpful when in other instances where I have stepped in either technology-wise or production-wise or pre-production wise or post, like having ideas from experience. Like, I have a lot to bring to a lot of different projects. Whether or not you need all that tapped information from me is a whole nother question. And like I'm saying, partially it's for me to decide. But yeah.
A lot of it's just communication, right?
It's communication, but I would say it's like kind of those three levels. It's like, what can you extrapolate from what's been given to you at the surface level? What do you need to ask for, if anything, to make it go better for you or for the artist, to make them feel confident in you and themselves and comfortable, because that's key. And then what can you do extra to go above and beyond, or do you need to at all? Or what you think is above and beyond is not going to be the thing, and that could be the case too. Like nobody is asking you to do this. Why are you doing this? Blah, 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 So just being very cognizant, like reading the room, and asking questions, asking other people, like if it's you and your friends getting hired to play for an artist, or if you know somebody, like trying to get information and trying to feel out the vibe, it helps a lot.
Yeah. Kind of on a related note, it also makes me think, like, if you're doing a lot of collaborating, hired things, like how much time do you spend talking about splits and ownership and all that kind of stuff?
It depends on the situation. It depends on how musically geared it is. If it's like more admin or like a production thing, it's less of a thing versus like, oh, I wrote this section, or, oh no, I edited your melody and that's our melody now,
Yeah.
But sometimes that stuff comes up or whatever. But if it's not musical, I feel like it has to be talked about in a different way. Like, oh, you want me to bring all this stuff to record you in the band? You hire somebody else, or whatever. Can you pay me for that?
Yeah.
Like there might be that kind of thing. Or, oh, I wrote you charts for all the tunes. Like you're going to hire some other people in the future. Do you want to buy these from me?
Okay.
Or, there's just like a lot of different things that could be extra work wise. Some stuff I'll just like, oh, you want to have a writing session or you want to like get together to arrange, it like might be more of a mutual collaboration.
So a little bit of is again, like back to when you read the room of what you're being asked to do, you try to clarify, like, this is what I'm doing. So you can use the right language so that there's no surprise too of like, yep, this is a writing session. Therefore, here's a split sheet. And
all that stuff.
Okay.
So just trying to get everything really clear. And then like, if it's, like I said, if it's more in the collaborative spirit, like I'm not going to like invoice for something, that is, been super beneficial for me as well. And it's more, oh, this is our time, not your time. So it totally just depends.
Yeah. So you just have to kind of figure out where your line is personally of the things. It's like, these are the kind of tasks or the kind of gigs that I need to be paid for. And then these are the kind of tasks or the kind of gigs, kind of relationships that I'm okay being a collaborator for.
Yep. It depends also on friendship levels too.
Right.
Like when you're working with your friends, which I want to be doing that as much as possible, there's another gray line. It's like, and that has become a little bit sticky too. It's like, how much of what I'm doing is collaborative? And then where's the line of, oh no, this is me doing something for you. How am I going to remedy the balance and the boundary of my time and energy and my talents that I'm bringing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of it comes down to like some like music directing stuff. It's like, you're not paying me to MD. Like, I'm not going to fix the problem that I know how to fix right now, Or sometimes I will do it because that's what needs to happen, or at least chiming in and being like, hey, would you be open to doing it like this,
Got it. Yeah. So probably not necessarily a right or wrong way. It kind of comes down to just figuring out where your line is and then trying to be consistent for yourself, for the variety of people that you're working with, because you don't want to be unfair to one group. And,
And then also some people are hiring me just to play guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like just to play a part. And some people are hiring me as an artist, if that makes sense,
Okay.
So I have like a hired gun, just fee, and then I have like an artist kind of fee. Like if I am more in a collaborative effort, if it's like more of a jazz thing, or like if you're hiring me, like even some like solo acoustic stuff or like a duo acoustic thing, like half the gig depends on me. And like you like what I do and like you like how I'm going to accompany you. And it's more representative of me, it might start to creep up into like, oh no, this is like, you're hiring me as a co-artist, like,
And so theoretically that's a higher fee.
Yes. Yeah. And same for like jazz stuff, like when you assemble like these jazz groups, or if you're looking for people that can not only represent your music well, but that will put their own heart and soul into it.
Yeah.
And sometimes people want that, sometimes they don't, whatever. But for a lot of times people are like, I want you to play my tune, but play it like you. You know what I mean? And that is a very important part of jazz chemistry and putting bands together, and sometimes the success of bands. Because like a lot of times what's magical about improvisation and jazz and these forms and structures that you create, these vehicles you create for improvisation moments, you don't want them to be over prescribed, or you don't want it to be overly, you want that improvisational element to be out there for somebody to show how they are.
Yep.
And so I feel like that in those regards, like I'm being hired as me, as an artist. I'm not being hired as some guy that can play guitar. I'm being hired as David Feily, who plays guitar like this. And so I've been trying to navigate that. And that's also a gray area. But as I travel more and see how other people do it, I'm finding myself I have more worth than I think sometimes.
Yeah.
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 And I want to make sure that I'm respecting myself in that regard too.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've not really thought about and kind of until sort of recently, especially outside of my own music. Like when it's me, it's like, duh. Like when I play for another artist, like, is that kind of a gig something where it deems me to be like, oh, he is, his own person.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. This might be a pretty broad question, but what does a typical day look like for you when it comes to, obviously I know that there's a huge variety. Mm-hmm. So maybe just pluck an average day out of your mind of how do you go about structuring your day, your week? What are the tasks that you're often doing over and over again? What I'm trying to do here is give a listener, again, that's like, I love playing guitars. I want to do what you're doing. An idea of what it really is like.
Got you. So it depends. Sometimes I'll break it down into like a performance day and like a teaching day. Mm-hmm. And I'll kind of, my mental angle or my mental state is a little bit different going into it, knowing what I have to do that day. So some days culminate in teaching, some days culminate in recording, some days culminate in preparation, and some days are performance. And so I kind of have a different mental state for all that. But I would say typically I'll wake up pretty early because my wife wakes up early. So especially post-COVID, I've been waking up pretty early when she does. And then sometimes I'll go back to bed in the morning, snooze club. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are workout days typically. And I've started the Musicians Racquetball Club. I've been doing that for many years.
What's that?
The Musicians Racquetball Club is just a bunch of guys in the music scene from different kind of parts of the music scene. And we play racquetball from like 11 to 1 almost every Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Cool. How many gigs on average are you taking per week?
It ebbs and flows. 3, 4, it can be a lot. Like there's times like where I play 3 gigs in a day or 2 gigs in a day. So I couldn't even tell you an average.
Sure.
I should probably look though.
Yeah. But it's safe to say you're doing at least 3 gigs a week?
Usually.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll have weird weekends off or whatever, but I have like, rehearsals and like teaching still during the week.
Yeah. And
things like that. But it's just totally ebb and flow. I try to fill my calendar as much as possible within reason. Yep. I live and die by my calendar. I live and die by my emails. I have a folder for everything. Mm-hmm. I'll show you after this. Sure. I don't know if I've showed you before, but I literally have a folder for everything. And my inbox on my email on my phone is kind of my to-do list.
Yep.
And if it's something that I have not kind of cleared or thought about or dealt with, it stays in the inbox. But after that, it goes into the specific folder. And then I can very, very easily find stuff. Like if I have a Dakota gig coming up and I need to look at something that, I filed away a long time ago, I just go find that folder. And
yeah, you create a system to keep everything organized. Yeah.
Yep. And then living and dying by the calendar, creating blocks for certain bands, being really diligent about that. Mm-hmm. And just never double booking yourself, always giving yourself time to get where you need to go. Communication with other people, like especially if I have to move things around, like just being very, very on top of everything.
Yeah. Are there any specific tools you want to recommend?
I think the folder thing for the emails is really important, especially if you're going to start playing for a lot of different artists.
Are you just doing that through Gmail?
Yep, just create a new folder and you can just very easily find stuff for like any group.
Yeah, I am going to start doing more of that because I don't like my email system.
Yep.
For work, I use an app called Twist.
Gotcha.
And so every one of my clients is in Twist and they have it's kind of like Slack, if you've ever used Slack.
Yep.
Everybody's got their own channel. And then inside their channel, we have threads. And so every song is its own thread. So each thread has its mixes, its conversation, everything from the demo to mix 1 to whatever the final is. It's all organized by song. And then we have threads specifically for other stuff, general conversation, maybe social media, general questions, whatever, If there's a topic we're going to spend time on, we just make a new thread. It's a lot easier than email. So I'm not using email for work.
Right.
But there's still enough other stuff that comes to email that I'm just like, I gotta do more
everything
with that,
gets a folder.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't have a folder, I make.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, a couple final questions here because I want to be conscious of your time and I appreciate this. When it comes to all the different things that you're doing, how does your income kind of break down? Like how much of it is from gigs? How much of it is it from teaching? How much is it from endorsements or other things that I haven't even brought up yet, I guess?
I would say it's primarily through performing and live performance and learning music and playing with people and touring and all that stuff. And then since starting MacPhail definitely a larger chunk has been coming from teaching, especially because I'm at more of a larger institution. They're a nonprofit. You know, they have a lot of things that they can offer. And so it's different than just teaching. It's like admin-ish stuff, working with marketing team, outreach. It's like creating a way more just like stuff for them, like to offer, if that makes sense.
Got it.
I'm in the GMI, the Global Music Initiative, kind of arm branch right now. And it's just kind of like the new path forward, I guess, in some ways for MacPhail to venture into these non-classical kind of standard forms, like to help them modernize just like the way that they think about teaching music. And so it's a little bit of a different kind of role than a typical educator role, maybe.
Yeah. So is it 50-50? Is it 70-30? What's the...
I would say it was what this year was like 60-40 probably.
Okay.
Playing and teaching.
Okay.
Yeah, towards playing. I don't think that teaching, maybe right when I was starting, like I was mentioning before, like right out of college when I was doing the 4 days a week, that was the only time when teaching was making me more money than performing.
Yeah. And then what about other miscellaneous income streams? Do you rely on things like streaming revenue or sync or
Not really.
or the endorsement stuff? Is that a revenue stream or is that mostly gear and opportunities?
It's been gear in the past, opportunities, expenses paid on trips. This last time going down to South by Southwest with Electro Voice was awesome. It was amazing. We're down there for the whole week, just giving away free microphones, and we were trying to get people to do impromptu sets, and to demo the gear and stuff like that. And we were in the artist only area. So like it wasn't just random people, it was, artists and stuff like that. But they paid me for being down there. They gave me a day rate and then also all the travel expenses and stuff like that. So it's like a partnership. I wouldn't say it's like a constant like source of income. It's just like, oh, the NAMM show's coming up or the South by Southwest is coming up. What can we do to make it like a fun, engaging artist thing?
Yeah.
And then we just kind of work it out from there.
Let's actually segue to that quick because I think, because I really don't know much about endorsements and I'm guessing the audience probably doesn't either. How do you get them? I mean, everybody thinks that's pretty cool, right? Everybody wants to be endorsed. What does it actually mean if you get endorsed? As we were just kind of touching on, and how important is it to your career?
I think endorsements give credibility. I think an endorsement is a two-way street. It's not only the company endorsing you as an artist, but you actually wanting to endorse them.
Yep.
And I think that's important if you want to be genuine about it. And if you're not just trying to, be a gear whore or gear slut or whatever, and just represent whoever is going to plaster you or whatever. So that's kind of the first thing. It's like, do you actually care about the gear that, you're trying to be endorsed by?
Yeah.
So let's see. The first company I think was Fishman, I believe. And I was working with Zivix and Jamstick a little bit. Do you know them at all? They're doing the MIDI guitar.
I know Jamstick, yeah.
Jamstick, the MIDI guitar, whatever.
We used to have one here somewhere. I don't know what
so they got crazy. Like the whole new one is amazing. Like did you have the one that had the little square like box one?
Yeah, I think so.
They're messing around with like an optical sensor or whatever on the fretboard instead of actual using a pickup for sound.
Okay.
But they were working with Fishman, who also had their own pickup, kind of like the Roland synth. And so that was purely through that connection. They were like, we want you to learn more about our product that you are basically product testing for us, the Jamstick. We want you to list all the flaws, what you don't like about it, what you like about it. But also, we're trying out this technology, but this is the other one that we're doing. Here's our Fishman contact. Like, do you want to link up with them? I think you would get a lot out of their MIDI pickup system or whatever. Do you think it's better? Blah, blah, blah. So the first thing that they did was they sent me the MIDI pickup, and it has like a little dongle, and it's actually wireless MIDI pickup for guitar. And it has like a little magnetic thing and a little flying saucer transmitter thing. And it actually works really well for something that you can not invasively install. And I was like, man, this is super cool. And I play keys though too. And so it wasn't helping me too much. Like I don't use it that much.
Sure.
But then also Fishman does amazing, like what they're usually known for is their amazing acoustic pickups. And so I've been using Fishman and Martin guitars because they've had that partnership for forever. And so I hit them up about not only the MIDI guitar stuff, but I hit them up about the other stuff because they gave me like an official endorsement deal. There's like a contract that only went through like a year, but then they basically like verbally and like just committed to endorsing me. But for that deal, they gave me the MIDI guitar stuff for free. I think that they gave me, one other piece of gear. I can't remember if it was like the foot controller thing for it or if it was the guitar pickups, but I eventually ended up getting a bunch of stuff for artist price now. So I've gotten a couple of different pickup systems from them, replaced them in various guitars. And I've also helped other people get endorsements with them and artist pricing, basically, for a lot for educational purposes. Like the Minneapolis String Project guys are amazing educators, and I've been able to hook them up with pickups for their different programs and for things like that. I'm sort of lightly in touch with them, kind of like all year round, especially around the NAMM show time. I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing? I'll be there. Can we come by and just like say what's up? And they didn't have like an official booth. They had like a meeting booth this year, so it's a little bit different. So that's the one endorsement. That was my first one, and it was purely based on another person's relationship and had to do with like work that I was doing. Another endorsement I got was through another friend connection, Keeley. Keeley pedals are amazing guitar pedals. Like Robert Keeley became famous from modding other pedals back in the day, like the Blues Driver, like from Boss and all these things.
Okay.
All these pros were using him. So he came out with his own line of pedals a long time ago. He was like one of the first boutique guitar pedal makers.
Got it.
But my buddy Ken Valdez hooked me up with them, and they actually sent me 5 free pedals. They're like, pick whatever you want, and then artist pricing on anything.
And what's the exchange? They say, we want to endorse you. You say, cool. What do you have to do then?
So it's just give them the bio, give them a headshot, like give them a quote about Keeley. For them, it was not, there wasn't any like super strong, post this amount of time, this amount of days. Like I know for other people with guitar endorsements and things like that, it's a lot more rigorous of a deal, especially nowadays. Like these were, 7 to 10 years ago, maybe, that I got these. I feel like social media and the rise of things like Instagram and TikTok have definitely changed the endorsement.
More expectations for you to post about things and publicly sponsor it. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm not about that as much.
Yeah.
Like it would have to be like a very, very crazy endorsement for me to do that.
I would say the biggest thing though about endorsements, obviously there's a lot of different arrangements, is the credibility thing. It just looks good. It's nice to have on the resume.
Oh, also, absolutely. Especially if it's like big brands. Like Evie has been a little bit different, where it's like we've exchanged gear for like work. Like for the first couple of the NAMM shows, they're like, how do you want us to pay you? We're flying you out, getting your hotel and stuff like that. Like, and at that time I was like, man, I could make a lot of money with a PA. And so they basically hooked me up. Like I bought one of the Behringer X-Airs and programmed that thing so I could just show up to gigs and basically have everything ready to go.
Yeah.
I could fit everything onto one of those big rock and roller carts. Yeah. Like I was using guitar modelers so I could run sound and do all these wedding and corporate gigs. And that was amazing. And that's been like an ongoing relationship kind of.
Sure.
It's less about like I use their gear and I think it's super helpful. It's like more authentic, but less formal.
Got it.
If that makes sense.
Got it. Yeah.
Like I'm giving the North America sales rep a bass lesson like tonight. Like for Evie, like we're homies. Like it's awesome.
Yeah.
They're amazing, amazing people.
Yeah. And for anybody that doesn't know, Evie is in town.
Burnsville.
Yeah. And RE20 Mike here. David's been glancing over. This is going to be slightly off camera so no one else sees it, but I'll explain why I've been looking over is that I've got an EV30 here.
The Evolve. Yeah. The Evolve Tower.
And it's just a, portable PA. But it sounds awesome, and I love it. And
there's a mixer and effects.
We both own one, and so they've been great. Oh, yeah. And Jerome, shout out to him over there, hooked me up with that, and I could see how that always changes depending on what the company's looking for. And
exactly. But I've hit them up for things at MacPhail, like they're making a really generous donation for gear for us to use in rehearsals and all that stuff as well. But like I said, it's like informal but formal, and it's just really authentic relationship wise. And then the last big one I have is it was a cold call.
Interesting.
This is probably the most interesting one. We got hired. I play for a group and I write and do a lot of collaborations with Rhythm Street Movement, which is a theater and dance company where we have a full live band and tap dancers, 5 to 6, depending on what show we're doing. We were hired to do, which I think is sort of unheard of, but we were getting hired by Toro, the lawnmower and lawn appliance snowblower company. We were hired by Toro to do some online marketing stuff. Like they had their marketing team all do these separate projects or whatever. And they had seen one of our shows and they knew our music director and founder, Ricky Milan. So they gave us the full contract to write like a jingle basically, and to also film the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if that's common for a production company to do both sides of it or whatever. But anyway, we did a lawnmower one that went really well. And it was like kind of bluegrassy. Like I did acoustic guitar, banjo, mandolin, upright bass, and like, the brushes, like kind of like a train, like country. Mm-hmm. I was kind of like trying to do the Menards,
sure,
sort of thing for Toro, like the yeehaw, mow your lawn type of deal. And it went great. We had a our buddy Travis Anderson come out and shoot the video. We went on 2 locations. One person had this really nice backyard. One person had this really nice garage. And it was really fun. And so they asked us to do a snowblower video. And we were waiting around a long time for it to snow. And like the contract was really getting really messed up because it was just not snowing in Minnesota that year. And they wouldn't rent us a snow machine. Like we tried to go to like the ski hills and like for insurance reasons, they wouldn't let us shoot on the hill.
Yeah.
And so it was just getting pushed back and it was a mess. And so I kept thinking about other ways that I could get more out of the whole deal or whatever. And I've always wanted a carbon fiber guitar. So I know it was a snowblower video and there was hopefully going to be snow. And I was like, what if we have this guitar in the video? Because we were like playing in like in the other commercial and like shovel snow with it, like show that it can withstand, this stuff. So I called 3 guitar companies that did carbon fiber. The first one was like kind of like the first mover Rain song. And they like laughed at me on the phone. They're like, yeah, all of our guitars are on back order for like how many ever years. Like they just go out the door. They make them, they go out the door. They're like, I'm sorry, there's probably nothing we can do for you. And I was like, all right, cool. Like very expected. The second one I called and the guy just kind of like weirdly gave me this like huge runaround and like we talked for way too long about nothing.
Okay.
And then I was kind of discouraged from both of those. But then the third company is MacPhail. And they're sort of semi-local. They're down near La Crosse in Sparta, Wisconsin. And they have this whole new carbon fiber series of guitar. And they're known for these crazy, wood ones, the sound holes in a different spot and all that stuff. Like they're very recognizable. And I called them and I got the like head of like artist relations and like research or whatever, this guy Larry, who I've seen like videos online on YouTube. And he happened to pick up the phone and I gave him my like pitch, my cold call pitch. I emailed, he was like, send me the video from the Toro thing.
Yeah.
And I sent him the other one. He was like, oh yeah. He was like, let me see what I can do for you. He puts me on hold and comes back. He was like, yeah, we got this guitar. I don't know if you'll want it or not. It's a 3/4 size carbon fiber and a retailer or like a guitar store just sent it back because they were doing pictures of the guitar and in the lights and stuff, it showed this tiny little blemish in the finish in like the carbon fiber pattern or whatever on the top. And they're like, if you want it, you can have it. We'll give it to you. And they overnighted me the guitar. It's like a $3,000 guitar.
Whoa.
And so that endorsement started. And then they've had me come down to Sparta a couple times because I'm like semi-local and do sessions where they'll do filming and I'll just play a bunch of their guitars. They're like, and so that one was probably one of the cooler shot in the dark ones.
Yeah.
And it's like, just like go for it.
Yeah.
And what I tell other people about endorsements is the worst that they can say is no.
Sure.
You just never know. Like if you don't have a connection, like I was like, hey, do you guys know who Toro is? Or they're like, yeah, we do. Like,
That's awesome, man. Well, this conversation has been fantastic. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. I know there's still a lot more we could go over, but just for the sake of time, I think it's a good time to wrap up. One thing I've been asking all guests at the end of each episode is what their secret to the scene is. And what I mean by that is something that you would want to tell your former self, something that you want to pass down that you wish you would have known as you were getting started, a big lesson.
I typically, when somebody asks about like the scene and like how to just like, what's the secret to the scene, I typically say go to shows. But I feel like I have never had to tell my former self that because that was always me just in general. It's like go to shows, meet people, like find people that are interested in the same music that you're in and all that stuff.
I would say though that there definitely might be people that don't need that tip, but in recent years, post-COVID and stuff, there's less people going out. It's easier to stay inside and just try to do your whole career online. But there's so much value to actually making friends, going to something like the Blue Nile where there's an open mic, like how you got started and building your actual local community. And there's a lot going on here in the Twin Cities. So
there is something amazing every single night. The thing that's most similar to the Blue Nile thing that's happening now is the Snapped open mic at the Green Room.
Yeah.
Every Thursday. That's
Ryan?
Yep, Ryan Bynum, who I was talking about.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep, he literally got the torch passed, basically.
Yeah, so I just met Ryan. I didn't know what his last name was.
Yeah.
I met him
he gets around.
Saturday. So, well, that's very cool, man. I think that's a great tip.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, if somebody wants to follow you, catch shows, whatever, where would you like to send people to connect?
I think the best place for me right now is Instagram. I really like that platform. I really like connecting with people there. I haven't really jumped in on anything more modern than that, like TikTok and stuff like that. I've never gotten on Twitter or X. I would say that's the place that I like to stay most updated and stuff like that. I have a little highlight that's called Upcoming on there where people can just click on that and see where I'm playing with a bunch of different artists and playing.
And what's your Instagram handle?
David Feily Music.
Got it.
should be pretty simple.
I will include that in the show notes, of course.
Awesome.
Is there anything else?
I think that's it. You can follow me on YouTube and stuff like that. I haven't, spent that much time, but there's a ton of content if you like what I do and want to see a decade of maybe some history of the things that I've been into or the things I've been doing. There's some good stuff on my YouTube. Cool. But yeah, I'd say IG and YouTube.
Great. Well, I think that wraps it up for today. For everybody listening, thank you for tuning in. If this was your first episode, I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to reach out. Let me know, whether it's a DM, an email. I have all that stuff in the show notes. Let me know what you thought. If there's anything that you want me to go deeper on, or guests that you think we should have on, I'm open book for any of that stuff. Otherwise, thank you for listening. Please share it with a friend, like and subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you next time.